Imagine you're a German soldier in 1942, trying to sleep in your trench on the Eastern Front. Suddenly, you hear it, a quiet whooshing sound, like a witch's broomstick cutting through the night sky, and the bombs start falling. You scramble for cover, but you can't see anything. No engine noise, no lights, just that terrifying whisper in the darkness. The Nazis called them Nachthexen, the night witches, and they were absolutely terrified of them. But here's the crazy part. These weren't hardened male veterans flying state-of-the-art fighter planes. These were young Soviet women, some barely out of their teens, flying planes made of plywood and canvas that were already obsolete in World War I. And they became one of the most feared bomber units on the entire Eastern Front. So how did this happen? Well, when Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, Stalin was desperate. He needed every able body he could get. A famous Soviet aviator named Irina, basically the Amelia Earhart of Russia, saw an opportunity. She convinced Stalin to let her form 3 all-female Air Force units. Most people thought it was a joke. Women flying combat missions? It had never been done before. Not like this. The Soviet military gave these women the worst equipment they had. They got Polikarpov Po-2 biplanes. These things were designed in 1928 as crop dusters and training planes. They were made of plywood, covered in canvas. They had open cockpits, no guns except for the rear gunner's rifle, no radios, no parachutes because there wasn't enough weight allowance, no armor plating whatsoever. A single tracer bullet could turn the entire plane into a fireball. These planes were so slow that the maximum speed was 94 miles per hour. German Messerschmitt fighters flew at over 350 miles per hour. The Po-2s flew lower than the stall speed of German planes, which meant if a German pilot tried to slow down enough to shoot them, his own plane would literally fall out of the sky. That also meant these women had to fly dangerously low, sometimes just 500 feet above the ground. Here's how they hunted. They flew only at night, in total darkness. The pilot and navigator were a 2-woman crew. They'd fly to their target, and here's where it gets insane. To avoid detection, the pilot would cut the engine and glide in silently. The only sound was the wind whistling through the canvas and wooden struts. That whooshing sound that terrified the Germans. They'd glide in, drop their bombs by hand, literally just pushing them out of the cockpit. Then restart the engine and get out before the Germans could react. They flew multiple missions every single night, not 1 or 2, sometimes 15 or 18 missions in a single night. They'd land, refuel, reload bombs, and go right back up. In the summer of 1942, one pilot named Irina Sebrova flew 18 missions in one night. That's landing and taking off 36 times in darkness with no instruments. Germans hated them. Any German pilot who shot down a night witch automatically received an Iron Cross, one of their highest military honors. That's how badly they wanted these women stopped. But shooting them down was incredibly difficult. The planes were too slow, too low, too quiet. They'd appear out of nowhere, drop their bombs, and vanish into the darkness. One of the most famous night witches was Nadezhda Popova. She flew 852 missions, 852 times. She climbed into that flimsy wooden plane and flew into enemy fire. Her plane was hit by flak so many times that after the war, she said there were over 40 bullet holes in it. She once crash-landed in a field, spent the night hiding from German patrols, then walked back to base and flew again that same night. These women dealt with things male pilots never had to face. They had no proper uniforms. They wore hand-me-down men's uniforms and had to cut off the feet of oversized boots and stuff them with rags. They had no sanitary supplies. They dealt with their periods while flying combat missions in open cockpits at freezing temperatures. Many suffered from frostbite because they had no proper gear for the Russian winter. The Soviet military didn't take them seriously at first. Male pilots mocked them. Ground crews didn't want to work with them. But after the night witches started racking up kills and completing impossible missions, that changed fast. By the end of the war, they'd flown over 23,000 combat missions and dropped over 3,000 tons of bombs on German positions. 23 of these women were awarded Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest honor in the USSR. But it came at a terrible cost. Many didn't make it home. When you're flying a plane made of canvas and wood, there's no room for error. One night witch named Yevgenia Rudneva flew 645 missions before she was finally shot down and killed just weeks before the war ended. After the war ended, you'd think these women would be celebrated forever. Right. Wrong. Stalin wanted to erase the memory of women in combat. It didn't fit his vision of Soviet society. Most of the night witches went back to regular life, and barely anyone knew what they'd done. Nadezhda Popova became a flight instructor. She lived until 2013. Most people had no idea that the quiet, elderly woman had once been one of the most feared bomber pilots on the Eastern Front. Today, there's a street named after them in Crimea. There are memorials in Russia. For decades, their story was almost forgotten. These young women, some just 17 or 18 years old, flew outdated wooden planes into hell every single night and became legends that made hardened Nazi soldiers afraid of the dark. the Night Witches proved something the world wasn't ready to accept. That courage has nothing to do with gender. That determination and skill matter more than equipment. And that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the biggest gun or the fastest plane. Sometimes it's the quiet whoosh in the darkness that you never see coming. If you found this story as incredible as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from World War II. What other unknown heroes should we cover next? Let me know in the comments below.